Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Safety here with Anthony Broom. Chris Ballas out sick today. We are going to talk about a ton of stuff that we have this week. NFL Combine going on down in Indianapolis. Michigan basketball here coming down the stretch run. 4 more regular season games. We got the biggest story in college football right now. All these spring games getting canceled around the country. Michigan announced their staff, full support staff with different titles, some promotions, some new additions to the staff this week. We'll talk about that. And Anthony, the thing I'm most excited for, there was a reporter fight at a Starbucks down in Indy during the Combine. We will get to that at the end because you and I have some experiences at some of the Starbucks down there during the Combine last year. But like this video, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. And head to thewolverine.com. Use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. That's 50 cents a month for the next 2. A lot coming your way with Michigan basketball, spring ball. You got visitors coming on recruiting trips throughout the spring. It's going to be a big few months here for Michigan on the recruiting trail. So head to thewolverine.com. Get all your coverage now. And like we said, like the video. We're going to talk about Mason Graham, a fan favorite on this show. If you're a fan of Mason Graham, give us a like. Let's get to 300 likes on this video. No reason not to just make that one click, hit the thumbs up, and get us going there. But, Anthony, let's start with Michigan basketball. Monday night, 49-46 over Nebraska. No one saw that coming. It was beautiful pain. Beautiful because you won. Painful because both teams shot under 30%. Pretty much had never seen a basketball game like that, but a day goes by, or even you wake up the next day. Now it's Thursday, 3 days later. I mean, to just be on the winning side of that rather than the losing side, there's both teams, it was kind of an embarrassing display in some respects and kind of hilarious in the same way. But to come out on top and to continue chasing for a Big Ten championship and to have beaten a team that's going to likely be in the NCAA tournament on their home floor, regardless of how you did it, is still a win's a win, as they say.
For sure. And it's one of those things where whether you're live tweeting it, whether you're in the game thread on our website, whether you're just watching at home and texting buddies, I had a friend who's texted me during the game telling me it's, maybe the worst thing he's ever seen from 2 basketball teams that will probably make the NCAA tournament when it comes to Nebraska. But when the dust settles, you get the win in these weird games, whether it's a shootout, whether it's a rock fight. It's one of the, it can be stressful during it, but at the end of the night, if your team walks out with a win, hey, you did your part. You kept pace in this Big Ten race, and I'm aware of what the eyeball test from that game looks like, but going on the road and winning a game where you shoot they were 18 for 60 from the floor or something like that. Shots weren't falling. It was ugly for both teams. A shot or two falls more for Nebraska, you lose a game like that. So as frustrating as it was to win a game, to keep pace in this conference race, which, every night out is a dogfight. We'll talk about this game they have coming up Thursday night. Will be another dogfight. All of them are in this league this time of year. But so, style points be damned. Ken Palm profile to a certain extent be damned. You got the win, you kept pace, and you got the job done.
Yeah, we're not going to talk too much more about basketball just because this will date itself here tonight. I mean, people listening maybe on the commute home, we'll talk a little bit about Rutgers, I guess, starting right now. Like you said, it was a weird spot. You have to mention the context surrounding this game where you come off a tough loss, your first home loss of the season. You fly out less than 2 days later, 36 hours later, to Nebraska. You get ready, you play a game, you're down one of your starters, Reuben Jones, to injury. Like, there were reasons why this was going to be kind of a rough, tough game. There have almost been some games this year when it's a spot where Michigan maybe could have lost and it would have been understandable, but they've pulled out a close win. So, like, people lament all the close wins. It's been, I think, 8 straight wins now by 4 points or fewer. But some of those could have easily been losses, and you wouldn't be talking about this weird, quirky stat with all the close wins. You'd actually be talking about hey, they've won some close games. They dropped a couple, and they're top half of the Big Ten and all this. But to win is a big deal, and they have another opportunity tonight. They opened as 10.5-point favorites over Rutgers. Second meeting between these two teams. The first one was kind of a rock fight type of game, 66-63 Michigan win in Piscataway on February 1st, in a game where Rutgers didn't have Ace Baldwin, their starting point guard, who's a projected top 5 pick in the NBA draft this summer. He will be back. He's been playing incredible basketball over
Dylan Harper,
the last
by the
couple
way.
games.
I think he said Ace Baldwin.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, Dylan Harper. Yeah, Dylan Harper, the point guard. Ace Baldwin played in Michigan, shut him down, went 3 of 15 from the floor, 10 points. But they get Dylan Harper back in this game, who's been outstanding the last two. Rutgers on a 2-game win streak, schedule lightened up a little bit for them. But you just never know. We talked about this on Monday. You never know what you're going to get from Rutgers because they do have some upside offensively. They're a very poor defensive team. And then their defense has not traveled. They haven't rebounded well on the road this year, but it's going to be a different game than the first meeting because because Ace Bailey was the focal point. There was only one of those guys. I realized I said Ace Baldwin earlier from Penn State just now as I said that out loud. But you kind of structured your entire defense around stopping Ace Bailey the last game, double teaming him, not letting him, put it on the deck at all, contesting pretty much everything, and really just kind of, the gravity was just flowing towards him. You allowed some open jump shots. They knocked some down, 7 threes combined between Tyson Akoff and JaMychal Davis. But now it's going to be different because Harper's back in, and you're going to have to deal with him in the pick and roll game. But your thoughts on this Rutgers matchup here tonight is, one of those games you got to protect home court.
Got to protect home court. Again, it's one of those games where I don't put a whole lot of stock into, the KenPom projection. I think Vegas has Michigan as a 10.5-point favorite. I don't put a whole lot of stock in that because I know, I try to think of what a team can be on its best night and, what its players are. And Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey are going to be 2 top 5 picks in this draft. They might be the second and third picks in this upcoming draft after Cooper Flagg. And it's been a disappointing year for them. They're sitting at 14-14. There's really no path to them making the postseason short of winning the Big Ten tournament. Or I should say making the NCAA tournament. But there's some juice there. Like if those two guys bring it, that can be good enough, especially if Michigan, we don't know how healthy a guy like Reuben Jones will be. We don't know what Sam Walter's status is, hours ahead of this game. So it's just one of those hunker down and get comfortable being uncomfortable type of games that this team has played really since mid-January at this point. Since that Washington game at home, it has been anything but smooth, but they've still found a way to win most of these games. They're 8-3 since then. So just hunker down, stay in the fight, get it done, and see if you can't position yourself. The goal is to position yourself for at least a share of that title when you head to East Lansing on March 9th, which is quickly approaching here. So when that team, talk about keeping pace, like I don't want to say they've got a horseshoe right now, but they keep finding a way and staying ahead and counter punching too. So do your part, keep pace, set yourself up for success.
I think Michigan is due for a breakout offensively. That certainly wasn't it on Monday night. So I guess you're even more due than maybe you were, would be one way to put it. And we'll see if they can get that against a team that's not good defensively. You're playing on your home court again. You didn't have a ton of rest in between this game, and you really won't all the way through next Wednesday. You have a couple days, and then you'll play Michigan State on that following Sunday to conclude the regular season. But, get the offense going in this game and just do enough on Rutgers. They're a solid offensive team that, like we said, has like a tremendous amount of upside when they do get, big time individual performances from those guys. They're 13-2 this year when they score 1.06 points per possession. and they are they've only won one game, 1-12 when they failed to hit that. So they win with offense, not defense. I think Michigan, if they can hit some shots and make some more of their threes like they haven't been doing lately, can win this game comfortably. But if you don't, you're going to leave the door open for them to make some plays at the end, and they have some of the best players on the floor that could make some of those plays. So it'll be interesting. And then, of course, the game on Sunday against Illinois quickly approaching as well. Another team that's pretty unpredictable that has a lot of talent but hasn't been able to put it together this season. Probably like an 8 or 9 or 7 seed in the tournament that you don't want to see if you're a 1 or 2 seed. And
again, you might want to see them given, their program history in the tournament. I know they went on a run, whatever, last year or the year before, but hey, who knows?
Yeah. Last season, completely new roster though. So it's kind of a clean slate for those guys. So you're right. Like who knows what these guys are going to do in the tournament, but I'm still somewhat worried about that game on Sunday. And then Maryland coming in, a very good team on Wednesday that lost on a 3-quarter court shot last night by Michigan State, which put them alone in first place in the Big Ten standings. So excited for tonight, 9:00 tip on Peacock. People aren't excited about that. Jalen Rose on the call as the color analyst should be
He's be everywhere, man.
He is. Yeah, he was at the Pistons game last night, right? As were you. And
he was there. And he's there often. I'm pretty sure he's a season ticket holder, but he's got seats at midcourt and he's on the floor. Like he's telling guys to put their hands up on defense. He's basically a coach. So a lot of people talk about the 6th man or the 12th man when it comes to home court or home field advantages. Maybe Jalen Rose is that for our red hot Pistons here.
That's right. I love it. He'll have to be a little more unbiased tonight, but everyone knows where he stands on all this. He's rooting for the Maize and Blue. Let's talk football and talk about the biggest story in college football right now, which isn't saying a ton because it's February, but some spring practice is set to start up here soon around the country. Michigan's will get going on March 18th, but the spring game cancellations, it's becoming quite the theme. Nebraska, Ohio State, Texas, Missouri, NC State, Florida State, USC. There are probably more that maybe hasn't come out yet and probably some to come that will announce this in the future, that they're done with their spring games, at least this season. Some of them are doing like a fan day or some sort of showcase or whatever, but they don't want other programs to get this film of basically a practice, a scrimmage, and then poach guys from their roster. And, that it kind of started last year when Ole Miss did a skills competition instead of their spring game. And Lane Kiffin is very paranoid. Matt Rule from Nebraska, who kind of started this year, is very paranoid. Coaches are paranoid by nature. I don't necessarily blame them, but there are some consequences here, I think, long-term, which no one seems to care about anymore in college football. Michigan set to do their spring game on April 19th on Big Ten Network at noon. It has sponsorships tied to it. It seems like they're planning on going through with this, and they're not going to be the only ones, but I do like that Michigan's doing it. And it sucks to see some of these go away, just more so for, I wasn't going to watch all of them, but just for the college football aspect of being able to get to your team stadium, connect with the team, and, get in there for free, bring families, bring younger people that wouldn't necessarily, maybe be able to afford a ticket, or, families that didn't want to bring everybody, or families that don't want to worry about parking and all the traffic and having their kids sit in a, crowded stadium. They can all get there, and some of them are being stripped from this opportunity, which I get it in the short term, but overall, it's one of the things that make college football kind of cool.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that there are programs that are choosing to do that, that see it necessary to do that. Struggling to come up with the right words for. I do think it's a bit paranoid. I think that by and large, like if you're a Power 4 program and you've got the infrastructure, the NIL, all of those sorts of things, I think Michigan can go out and do a spring game and feel at ease about their players not getting poached, because I think they have the ability to take care of their guys. But I think it's just in general putting anything on film. There's always a paranoia around that. I saw some buzz that maybe we're trending towards, an NFL OTAs type of calendar for for spring ball where there isn't necessarily a spring game. I just feel like for the sport, we are throwing away so many opportunities now to, I don't want to say grow the game, because short of the NFL, it's the biggest thing in America when it comes to sport. But I think we're just throwing away like this handshake deal with fans that like, hey, we're going to peel back the curtain. We love you guys. We support you. We want you to feel excited for us year round. And I just think we're getting away from that. I mean, we've been, the second you start jumping time zones to add football teams, and now you've got games on streaming networks exclusively and 9:00 tips and blah, blah, blah. Like the toothpaste has been out of the tube there for a while, but I will be here no matter what, because our job, I like football and our job requires us to anyways. But, if you are someone who's just feeling a little bit alienated by what feels like the sanitization of college sports, I understand that. And I think the spring game, we already are losing some traditional rivalries. We're losing, some of the things that made the traditions that have made this sport great. Taking away, and no one's taking away spring games. The programs are making decisions to do that, but to me, it's just a bummer. And I would love to. I don't know what the solution is, but I would love to see everyone play a spring game. That'd be awesome.
Well, you won't be there if Michigan cancels their spring game.
That's true.
We're lucky that Michigan isn't, and like you said, it's one of the 15 practices. They're choosing what they can do with it. Spring games are just kind of thrown together by each school. There's nothing official about it.
Let me say this too. Like it destroys, it does, if they do cancel the spring game, that destroy, like, because we already, and I'm not going off on a tangent on the access we get or don't get, but the spring game is one of the only, open sort of exhibitions we get. Maybe there's a rogue open practice here and there once in a while, every couple of years, but that's really all we've got. We get to see about that team, and people, I know there are fans that get mad when we just are able to cover press conferences and they say, oh, the quarterbacks look great, or, oh, the offensive line, they're going to keep smashing this year. And then people get mad at us when they see the product on the field. It's, well, we were given the same amount of access that you were in a lot of aspects there. So that's what bums me out, is that it would potentially be, I mean, really, it's one of our only data points in the spring of who's where, who looks good here. I don't know. It's just a bummer for everyone.
I think the only solution really, and I saw Matt Rule talked about this recently on a podcast, is getting something binding for these players, because the programs willingly are showcasing them in these spring games, and yet there's nothing binding keeping them at their program. We even saw it last year with Michigan, DJ Waller. Who knows if it was just the spring game that made Kentucky want to go after him, but he ends up leaving. And just some other guys that leave in the spring. You don't know all the reasons for these, but it could have been some deal like that. So nothing's binding these kids to staying. You showcase them, then they leave. And if you're the program, I can understand why you'd say, well, why are we doing this? And at the same time, you mentioned it, where they're kind of cutting off access fans between the program. This was a great way for fans to connect. Well, and they're basically saying the only way you can access the program is if you pay NIL. Then you can run out of the tunnel with the team and do all sorts of stuff like they did at, the Penn State fan that did it at USC. And that's troubling too, because, well, are there going to be in 20, 30 years the loyal enough fans that feel connected to the program to want to pay once they have the resources to do it? Is the 12-year-old kid now, like I did at a spring game, get to go on the field after, you get your stuff signed by different players, you meet the cheerleaders, all that sort of stuff when you're a little kid, and draws you to the program. In 20, 30 years, is that same kid going to want to cover the program for the Wolverine.com? I mean, probably someone will line up.
I mean, those are formative experiences
then once I have,
for you,
once someone in that situation has the resources, they, who knows, but that's just way down the line. These people won't be in those current jobs at the time, and they're just trying to kind of cover themselves right now. But anything else on this before we move on to the NFL Combine?
Nope.
Speaking of another tradition though is the combine. It's a tradition of like these workouts and training, but also reporters and team staff members getting together at Starbucks. We'll talk about that later, but St. Elmo's, Prime 47, Cafe Patachu, all the staples down in Indianapolis. So all sorts of conversations. That's when a lot of like trade rumors and free agency stuff heat up, and it's literally just artificial because people just descend on Indianapolis and kind of create this ecosystem of different conversations and ideas. And hey, you'll throw this trade proposal out there and over a ribeye at St. Elmo's, and maybe something gets done weeks from now. But Michigan's got 8 guys down there, actually 9 with long snapper William Wagner being down there. You got Donovan Edwards, Kalel Mullings, both running backs, tight end Colston Loveland, offensive tackle Miles Hinton, defensive tackles Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, edge rusher Josiah Stewart, and cornerback Will Johnson. It was 18, right, last year that Michigan had?
That sounds right.
Okay.
Maybe it was 16, and they had 13 drafted.
Look that up real quick, but it was –
I will.
So it's much less exciting this year because of the limited amount of guys. You have a bunch that could go in the first round, 4 or 5. Either one would break a record for the Michigan program. Yet what that means when you have all these top prospects is a lot of them are not going to go through the training. We already are seeing that. Will Johnson, he is not going to go through the on-field work. Colston Loveland has a shoulder injury. He went through surgery. He will not do this or the pro day. He'll be ready to go by training camp. Kenneth Grant, if it was revealed in his medical exam on Wednesday that he has a hamstring strain, so he will not go through workouts. Mason Graham is just going to do the bench press. He's not going to do the on-field work. I was especially excited to watch Kenneth Grant. I think most people were. I mean, it's not just the Penn State, running down Katron Allen back in 2023 in that ridiculous play because he was playing at 342 pounds, but just his athleticism that we've seen over the years. And you watch this guy walk around and, you ask him, and he's one of the biggest freaks in college football, and you ask his teammates and, they rave about him, but to actually see what those times would have been exciting. So a little bit of luster taken out of it with this, but still excited to see the guys that are going to go out there and what they can do.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I did look it up, by the way. It was 18 guys last year, so that's my bad.
That is insane. That is insane.
Yeah, and I felt like you and I were split up between podium to podium and going back to back with guys, and I feel like there was a stretch of like a couple hours where it's like, oh well, we regroup after talking to all these guys here. But yeah, I don't think it's a surprise to not see like Mason Graham. There's nothing for him to show at the NFL Combine. Put on the film. He's going to be he's one of the safer picks in this draft.
Would his stock go up by doing it? I don't think so.
The only reason his stock is going to go down at all is because it's not even his stock. It's where he's selected is because teams need quarterbacks and they allocate major assets to finding one. But, outside of a Travis Hunter, who, is an incredible player, Mason Graham is probably that next best guy in this class. So it doesn't surprise me. He won't do anything there other than bench. Kenneth Grant bums me out and that's a guy that you're looking at is maybe he's one of the stories of the combine if he's able to work out, because you've got this guy at 6'3", he's down to 332. He said yesterday, just running a sub 4.9 40 and doing all these crazy things out there. And it sounds like he didn't know that he had an injury. He pushed to still kind of work out, and it sounds like his representation won on that one. So all those guys will do work at the pro day on March 21st. Will Johnson's a little surprising to me, but other than that, I mean, Colston Loveland's injured. We're going to see those guys. There's a lot to gain for guys like Josiah Stewart and the 2 running backs and Miles Hinton. And those guys, seemingly, they have medical testing, I think, today and tomorrow, are all going to go through drills. So a lot more on the line for those guys, and excited to see how they perform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interested for the times that Donovan Edwards is going to run. Let's see how fast Kalel Mullings really is. All that sorts of stuff. And like you said, they have more room to improve their stock, whereas a Mason Graham, are his skills really the stuff that's going to show up in some of these on-field drills and the testing and the 40 and the shuttle. Not really. And he's shown everything he needs to show. And what he's shown is just an incredible 3 seasons of college football, capped off by 2 really dominant years once he became a full-time starter. And then this past season, and his best game of all time was the Ohio State game. And both Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant were asked this week at their press conferences at the Combine, is there a play or two or a game that you would want people to watch to really show who you are as a player? And both of them said the Ohio State game. And Mason Graham, he was asked about 1 or 2 plays, and he said, quote, I feel like just rolling that Ohio State film. That's all you need to see, really. And he was on with Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk, who, by the way, broke the reporter fight that we'll get to. He said, I feel like if you watch the tape, I was dominating every play. I don't know kind of what their game plan was. It was to run at me and KG, but I didn't think that was the best for them. We shut them down, and I feel like that was one of my most dominant games. He said a lot there, like in that short amount of time, because the game plan was like heavily scrutinized afterward and how that game was managed. But we talk about all the time, that Michigan kind of baited them into that as well, right? Where you play with a light box, you're double teaming Jeremiah Smith, you're kind of daring him to run, but if you have the horses to stop it, and it wasn't just that they had Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, it was that those 2 played their best games in Michigan uniforms and like as good as you can play as a defensive tackle, and the other guys played well too. You got to give them credit. That's why it didn't work, but I thought that was awesome. I also saw Jim Harbaugh said that he hopes to draft one of the Michigan guys, Loveland, Kenneth Grant, maybe. He said he'd love to. So that would be sweet as well. But your thoughts on any of the things you heard other than KG, man? You wrote the story yesterday. Like, we wanted to see what time he could have put up. He said 4.8, 4.9. But what did you hear that stood out to you?
I think you hit on the main points there. I would also submit. I don't know who else other than Michigan fans are watching us this time of year, but if there are any curious NFL draft ball knowers out there, the Mason Graham Ohio State film it's his best film for me. But if you really want to have some fun, watch what he did at Minnesota last year with a club on his hand. Like up until that Ohio State game, that's probably the best game I've ever seen him play. He was also great in the Rose Bowl too, but that kind of boils down my larger point about the Combine and really the NFL draft in particular is that there's all this hoopla around it, right? It's the sort of the opposite of college football, where in college football now things are getting more locked down and behind the scenes and all of those types of things. The NFL makes a spectacle out of it. But I think that there are teams and front offices that get lured into that spectacle and they worry about, what was this guy's cone time or how big were his hands? You put on the film, and really all 4 of these guys that should go in the first round, even Will Johnson. I know there's some knocks on him about his long speed, but he was asked about that today and said, have you ever seen anyone on film run past me? And he's gotten the best of a lot of really good wide receivers that either will play in the NFL or are playing in the NFL already. You think about the Washington game, the pick he had against Ohio State last year at home. You just throw on the film and you don't overthink it. And the athletic testing can either confirm or deny some of the things you see on film. It's just a data point as part of the evaluation. I think the meetings they have with teams where you're on film, you're at they're whiteboards now. They used to call them chalkboards. They were chalkboards.
That's why they call
all of that stuff. All that stuff matters. But I think at the end of the day, if you're a front office guy, you flip on the film and you take the best players, and Michigan's got 4 of the best players in this entire draft. It's true.
And as Mason Graham said about himself yesterday, and it goes for really the other guys, like, he's got nothing to hide. He's like, I'm all football all the time. And, there's nothing personally that I have to hide. Same thing goes for Will Johnson. I think it's a big part of why he was a successful corner at Michigan. I mean, think of the 2 pick sixes this year. Those were, preparation to a large extent, and just kind of feel for the game. And, that kid was at like a 7-on-7 tournament in, whatever city around the country every single weekend as a high school senior and before that. And, so they're just all football all the time. And, I think that what you see is what you get with a lot of these guys. So I'm excited for him. Jim Harbaugh in his various interviews, which, as you know, I obviously watched yesterday, he was kind of doing a media car wash. And I mean, he was so proud of the fact that they may get the record of first round picks this year with four. He's talking about that with Pat McAfee and all these guys. Four, could be five. Could be five. So we'll see if Josiah Stewart.
I wasn't okay. That's news to me. That would be a record, huh?
That would be a record. I don't know. I haven't looked at what the other ones with 3 would be, but he mentioned something about 1995. But I haven't done the research on that yet. So we're still a few months away from the draft. But
that's maybe you asked what's something that stands out from what I've heard the last few days. That might be the biggest one. That's kind of surprising to me with the guys at Alabama and Georgia and LSU have sent to the league the last decade or so. So, hey, that would be cool.
Well, this would be a Michigan record. This would be a Michigan record.
The Michigan record. I thought he meant the draft record.
No. Michigan. My bad. So,
okay.
But he's proud of that potential. And like he said, these are beloved sons of his that he would love to take one. It was kind of funny, like hearing him say that he would like to have him. And he's been talking up JJ McCarthy, people asking him about him and the comparisons between him and Justin Herbert and all that. And obviously in the Vikings and Chargers play this year, by the way. So we're going to get a JJ versus Jim Harbaugh game, which I'm excited for. And he said that part of him will be rooting for JJ, but he'll want to win the game. So,
yeah, he can say that. I don't believe that for a second. So,
I know. Well, Minter is, going to do everything in his power to shut him down, and JJ is going to do everything. Hopefully, JJ is a starter out there to put some points on the board. So, let's move on from the combine, though. We'll touch on Michigan's staff changes, much of which were kind of reported on bits and pieces here and there. We knew about Soup Campbell coming back as assistant wide receivers coach. He spent the last several years as the pass game coordinator and wide receivers coach under Scott Loeffler at Bowling Green. Biff Poggi, that was finally made official, although he was in the directory, on the website there for a few weeks now. But I'll run through the entire support staff. You got the 10 assistant coaches plus Sharon, but then this is the support staff. Biff Poggi, associate head coach. James Brown, assistant special teams coordinator. That's special teams coordinator JB Brown's father, who's a longtime coach. Eric Soup Campbell, assistant wide receivers coach. Juan Castillo, senior assistant offensive line coach. Jack Clark, assistant running backs coach. Garrett Clausen, assistant special teams coach. Nick Gilbert, assistant offensive line coach. Brad Hawkins, one of the winningest players in Michigan history, assistant defensive backs coach, graduate assistant. Brett Ingles, senior offensive analyst. Fred Jackson, senior offensive analyst / running backs. Grant Kersner, special teams analyst. Pernell McPhee, outside linebackers coach. Nick Roselio, assistant offensive line coach, grad assistant. Travis Russell, new addition to the staff, quarterback assistant. Josh Synagoga, assistant quarterback coach. Lionel Stokes, safety coach. So they're structuring this like an NFL team where you got the position coach and then you have an assistant position coach. A lot of this is just changing the title because, they're still going to do the analyst work and all that, I would assume. But there are some guys on this list here, AB, that you just want in the building. Like, I want Fred Jackson inside Schembechler Hall because he is Michigan football. I want Soup Campbell, who was a Michigan wide receivers coach from 1995 to 07, was on staff under Jim Harbaugh early on in his tenure, was a Michigan wideout here in the 80s. I want him in the building. And you can go on and on. Juan Castillo back here with the staff. Biff Poggi, you want him in the building. You want him to smoke his cigars, probably outside the building, but you feel good about some of these guys being there. And the way they're structuring it, right? Sharon Moore with a better grasp, a full offseason this year to figure out what he wants this to look like.
Yeah, I like it. Last year, I don't want to say it felt like it wasn't a coaching staff of holdovers, but it was kind of like there was a pretty stark contrast between the staff they had just had and the staff that they went into last season with. And that was a byproduct of everything that took place, right? But now it feels like you've got these guys like Sharon Moore. You bring in a Chip Lindsey who has a long pedigree of coordinating pretty good offense. And then you have all these guys who are here that kind of guided. You were here through I don't want to call it turmoil. I feel like that's overstating it a little bit, but they were here for some of the rough times. And then they got through that together and got to experience, the high point. That was that last 3 games of the year, specifically the last 2, more specifically the one that was in the middle on November 30th. But you have all those guys here now, and then you add and you augment by bringing in, a Soup Campbell. You bring in a Juan Castillo. Fred Jackson is still around. And, a lot of these guys, and that's the biggest thing in the staff announcement is really, it's just, you used to go through the directory. And I actually, a month or so ago, I did this. I wrote out every single member of Michigan football staff, and all of these guys were listed as offensive analysts, defensive analysts. And then you'd have to cross-reference that with their Twitter page to find out what position group they worked with. Well, now it's just, hey, Pernell McPhee, you're what we're calling the outside linebackers coach, and it's in our directory. So it's really just more of a more specific definition. But yeah, I like that there's a nice mixture of up and comers in there mixed with guys who, again, Fred Jackson's not going to step on Tony Alford's toes. Soup Campbell is a guy who coached Ron Bellamy, but he's not going to step on his toes. He's just more there as a guide and things like that. So, and Biff Poggi is that for Sharon Moore, much like he was for Jim Harbaugh. So I like it. It rounds things out pretty nicely. And it's cool to see some of these guys that we've heard about or that we, run into over the last few years kind of get more of a defined role other than, offensive analyst, defensive analyst.
Jim Harbaugh has been a head coach since the early 2000s at San Diego. Like sometimes, obviously he's an elite coach. I mean, you wish, I think every team in the country except a couple probably would take him, right? But so this isn't a knock on him, definitely.
And if they say they wouldn't, they'd be lying, by the way.
Well, they would. Yeah, that's true. They would say they wouldn't, but they really would take him. But sometimes the perspective of being an assistant coach, right, who rose the ranks like Sharon Moore was, and then becoming the head coach is when you're an assistant, you're kind of at that lower level, and it's still a very high level. But you kind of understand like, oh, if I was in charge, I would do this, I would do that. I mean, he's got now kind of a recruiting analyst that's paired with each assistant coach to handle. To help them with everything they need to do, whether it's scheduling, when they're going to go visit this kid, how much communication they have with them, that sort of thing. It's very, very structured, probably things Sharon Moore has thought about himself for years that he can now implement as the head coach. And the same thing goes, right? Last year was the first year where you could have analysts coach on the field legally. Some programs are doing that before that, of course, but now you can do it. Now it's going to help, I think, the development of the players. It's going to help these coaches have some upward mobility, gain experience, be a part of your program. They may want to come back once they experience some success and build on their resumes. And I will just say I want to shout out Travis Russell, the new quarterback assistant who will be working with the loaded quarterback room here with Bryce Underwood. Was a rival in high school at West Catholic in Grand Rapids. Was a rival growing up playing sports against each other throughout the years. Now he's at Michigan. So wish him the best of luck. Congratulations on that job. But yeah, a few others that, like you said, are kind of up and comers. Brad Hawkins just getting into coaching. The guys seem to love him. So Sharon Moore, I trust his judgment on some of these hires.
It wasn't in the show outline either, but we've talked about how these college football taking on more of an NFL feel, and you've got GMs now, and there's reports across the country where you have GMs now. Michigan guy Jim Nagy was the senior director, or the director of the Senior Bowl, is now Oklahoma's GM. They're going to pay him, it looks like, about $1 million a year. I don't know how many Michigan people with a say in things listen to our show. I'd like to think many of them do. You got to pay Sean McGee, or else someone else is going to. It's just flat out the reality of their situation right now. So be on alert for that, I suppose, too.
I didn't see that on Nagy with the Millie. That's big time. Probably more than he was making at the Senior Bowl. And he did a great job, by the way. And yeah, Michael Lombardi for North Carolina, $1.5 million. Chad Bowden, who went from Notre Dame to USC, $1 million. And I was looking it up yesterday through public records. Sean McGee, only $350,000 $100,000 last year. It's still a lot of money. But relatively speaking, if you're going to go by the comparisons out there, market value, like they do for the players and everything else, I couldn't agree more with you. You gotta pay him. Seems like he's doing a really good job from everything you hear. So
yeah, and don't quote me on the Nagy number. I don't. I thought I saw that. I can't cite it on here, so I probably shouldn't have said it.
But he's probably making a lot. Yeah, it's probably more than $350K. So
probably.
But I agree. It seems like that hire was, we just talked about the other ones because they're a little more new and they just announced it. But that hire of Sean McGee, I think, was very pivotal for Sharon Moore. You haven't heard a bad thing about what he's doing. In fact, you hear about how he's a game changer, and that really aligned with what Sharon wants to do. So should we talk about the reporter fight in Indianapolis, Anthony?
Put up your dukes, man.
Let's go. So we went to a Starbucks last year at the combine. We were behind Mike Vrabel in line. And you look around, like there are just people in the different, team gear and this and that. It's kind of cool. Who's that? What coach could that be? Some people having conversations, almost whispering to each other behind their cup of coffee there. But so it's kind of a staple of the combine. You got two of them that I know of in the hotels now. Hearing about the JW Marriott one, which is where this incident was. We went to the one in the lobby of the Marriott last year a couple times. By the way, Mike Vrabel ordered something with vanilla in it. Thought it was a little soft for what I thought he was. He was, but just kidding. He's obviously a tough guy. He could destroy me in one of these altercations. Jordan Schultz, insider for Fox, reported that Tom Brady hosted Matt Stafford for a ski trip, and they talked about potentially bringing him to the Raiders next year. Later in the day, Ian Rappaport of NFL Network was kind of not so subtly refuting the report, said they ran into each other in Montana. They had casual conversations, that sort of thing. So then this report from Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio, just the type of scoop you would expect Florio to have, is about the altercation. Schultz approaches Rappaport at the JW Marriott Starbucks. He says, "We need to talk." Rappaport says, "No, we don't need to talk." Schultz says, "If you have anything to say it to me, say it to my effing face." Schultz said, or specific words to that effect. "If this continues, we're going to have an effing problem." Rappaport then asked Schultz to step back. He said, "If this happens again, we're going to have an effing problem." That's Schultz. "Now I'll step back." The incident was reported to NFL Security. NFL Security is taking statements from multiple witnesses. I don't know how I feel about that, reporting it to NFL Security. But Anthony, it's a sensitive business. You realize that the more you're in it. Like, everyone sees everything. Everyone takes everything personally. I try not to do it. It's much easier way to live not doing it that way. But it's a very, very odd business that I think, once you go to one of these things, or you're just around enough people in this industry, you realize it. But this would have been our dream last year. If we were at Starbucks and we saw this altercation, it would have been, I wouldn't even needed the coffee for the day.
I would trade all of the good things that happened that week just to be a fly on the wall.
Exactly.
Listen, if you're watching, I'm wearing, let's rewind for a second. This is a situation involving Matthew Stafford accidentally, or, oh my gosh, what a coincidence, running into someone on vacation that he could potentially work for in the next couple weeks or the next couple months, with trade rumors surrounding him. I'm wearing a Lions hoodie right now. I know how this works. I know how that man operates. So when I see Jordan Schultz report what he does, and then I see it refuted by essentially what is NFL state media, with Rappaport and I have nothing against these guys personally, but I know it's pattern recognition, right? So, there's always these little media wars. I'm not, I would just say in this situation, I would never accost a reporter or anything like that, but well, I'm probably Team Schultz on this one though. Like, don't insult my intelligence. I've been, I was there when the dark magic was created, so to speak. So yeah, it's the way that some of the insiders will kind of word stuff to make it look not so sketchy and protect the league or protect agents. Yeah, I think I'll just say right now, Jordan Schultz is the bad boy of NFL media.
Verbally accost is also just a hilarious term that was in the headline. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't really know what all the rules are. Is it tampering or whatever? I think they told him he could seek a trade. I don't know all the details around the Matt Stafford part of it, but skiing with Tom Brady would be on. I would do that. That sounds kind of fun, but it's a crazy one. And my dad jokes with this about me too, where it's like if we're interviewing, let's say we bring on another guy from the media for our podcast, we create this content, and then someone aggregates it and whatever. It's kind of this like self-feeding ecosystem of content where then that's what the whole draft is too. You call up, Todd McShay or this and that, and they're incredible at their jobs. I'm a big Todd McShay fan, and some of the other guys, Daniel Jeremiah, all of them. But, then their mock draft becomes news. And then, it's this self-feeding ecosystem. And same thing goes, man, when you get a verbal accosting of a reporter. Now it's content that's on our podcast. So thank you to the whole media ecosystem for content. I'm
not at the end of the day, I'm not taking sides at all. We all eat, so I'll take it.
Exactly. I think that's going to be our show. Anything else on the altercation? We'll see what comes of it if NFL security arrests Jordan Schultz for this, but I don't know if they have the authority.
Well, we got a 9 o'clock tip tonight, so I'm gonna go grab a coffee at Starbucks. So no,
keep your head on a swivel. Keep your head on a swivel.
I will. They're aggressive out here in Oakland County, so
you never know. That's going to be our show for this week. Make sure to like the video. If you're a fan of Mason Graham, if you're not, fine, but hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe to our channel. Head to thewolverine.com. Use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. And we will see everyone next time.